The Queen presented the Order of Merit to Mother Teresa of Calcutta.
Mother Teresa has won the 1979 Nobel Peace Prize.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom.
No one has captured the public imagination like Teresa of Calcutta.
The world has turned to Mother Teresa for inspiration.
The most powerful woman in the world. Does Mother Teresa ever have moments of doubt when her faith is tested?
I am finding it very difficult. I have so many sisters, 342 at the mother house now in India. They need me, and I need them. And now this continual calling. I am afraid we are getting too much publicity. God preserve us.
The 1980s was such a materialistic decade, but Mother Teresa was the antithesis of the greed and the consumption.
Hunger is not only for a piece of bread. Hunger is for love.
In the midst of all this materialism and wealth, there was almost a growing spiritual hunger that Mother seemed to tap into.
Mother Teresa had created something quite extraordinary that was spreading throughout the world. Young women were drawn to this radical idea of poverty, simplicity, and serving the poorest of the poor.
Those cars, those televisions, those radios, all those possessions are just shielding, they're just hiding what the life is all about.
She's so countercultural. She was the real radical.
We too must love until it hurts.
Did you ever imagine when you began your work you would become so famous?
Nothing at all.
Mother Teresa didn't seek out fame, but neither did she shy away from fame. And in the 80s, her image would allow her to get entree into places of power.
One day, I said, "You're the most powerful woman in the world." And she said, "If I was the most powerful woman in the world, I would bring peace to the world." So I said, "Why don't you?"
The scale of the destruction in West Beirut is at times difficult to comprehend. The authorities have all but lost count of the dead and injured.
نحن بعتمة بيطلع عنه ما في كان محل واحد يتخبى فيه. وما في ما عبيموتوا جوع ولوحدهم والقصف الطيران الإسرائيلي عليهم.
Ils ont été oubliés, délaissés depuis 2 mois ici. Les Israéliens les bombardaient et les Libanais les ont tout simplement oubliés. Ça, c'est...
كتبت بيان صحافي طبعت مكتوب بوصف فيه كتب بالكبير SOS كتبت.
When Mother learned children were abandoned in an orphanage, she said that she must go and rescue them. Now, this was against all advice because bombing was going on. But she was very determined. So with the world press on her, she arrives in Beirut. The images are going around the world. She was canny enough to understand that.
I want to go where I am needed. Mother Teresa spoke those words today after arriving at a convent near Beirut.
وأول شغلة أكيد هيك كل الناس اللي التقوا فيها أكيد قالوا ذات الشيء. كل هالإرادة بعين بتقري الحنية وبعين بتقري الإرادة عندها. حسيت ما في شيء رح يوقف بوجهها.
I think to go and pick up the individuals that suffer. Then this, say 1, 2, 1, 2, we bring this side. The disabled.
I think to start it is very important.
I think.
Don't forget, 2 weeks ago they killed quite a few priests just like that, for the sake of killing priests. You see?
Mother Teresa confronted the local clergy who raised strong objections about her venturing from East Beirut into West Beirut at that particular time.
You go to the other side and you can't come back.
كانت ليلة الإجد كيف بدك تروحي على الغربية في قصف. قالت لهم أنا بدي أعمل وقف نار تنقل الولاد. صاروا يضحكوا حولها، صاروا يضحكوا يا ماي تريزا كيف العالم كلهم.
You see, I always feel like this. Many years back, when I picked up the first person, if I didn't do that time, I would have never picked up 42,000. In Calcutta, 42,000 from the streets. So I think one at a time.
There was a woman alone confronting the church, the local church hierarchy, and really giving as good as they did.
Being Mother Teresa, she went to the UN representative and she went to all the ambassadors and all authorities and said, please convey that there must be a ceasefire.
وصار وقف النار تاني يوم ودغري. بتذكر مرقنا على حاجز قوات هون بالسيارة بس كنت موترة. كمان أخذت لي إيدي عملت لي هيك إنه أنت معي ما تخافي. بتذكر بين إيدين يعني قديشة مثل ما شفتها أنا وقت.
Mother Teresa and a team of Red Cross officials took away a number of the children. Some reports said they were suffering from chronic malnutrition.
بتذكر مثل هم وانشال عن كتفها وجهها ارتاح تقريبا.
What do you plan to do next?
Give them love and tender love and care. That's all.
شهرة مار تريزا نفعتنا. قررت بده يعمل بده يصير وقف نار. العالم كله ما قدر عمل وقف نار. كيف وصلت على بيروت المحاصرة مثل أعجوبة. شفت أعجوبة.
Mother Teresa's image in the media around the world and people's hearts is really clear. This is a woman who was self-sacrificing. She's completely dedicated. She's a person full of love. And it meant she was the church's best ambassador, because she always got good PR, and that was good for the church. And in the 80s, The Catholic hierarchy started to use Mother Teresa over and over again. She would become a kind of secret weapon.
A pope has been elected. He's Cardinal Karol Wojtyla, the first pope from a communist country. He names himself Pope John Paul II. After the initial surprise at the Sacred College's choice, the Catholic and non-Catholic world is overjoyed.
Some of my favorite pictures of Mother are of her with Pope John Paul II because she seems kind of enamored almost. They shared this Eastern European background. She was really cute when she was around John Paul II.
They loved each other. We went to the Vatican. He welcomed her like touching her cheek. And Mother had taken her kind of a map. She was very proud to tell him, now we have 600 and something homes all over the world.
Pope John Paul continues his tour of India today. The Pope will be visiting the Nobel Prize winner Mother Teresa at her home for the destitute in the city slums.
When the Pope visited Calcutta, he came straight to the home for the dying, met with Mother Teresa. She went to kiss his feet in the Indian fashion, and he raised her up, kissed her on the forehead, and gave her a big hug. Mother Teresa pronounced it the happiest day of her life.
She saw Pope John Paul II as a father figure. He saw her as what truly the Catholic Church should be, the icon, as it were. And so these two huge forces come together.
They were both conservatives who felt that the church was becoming somewhat too liberal in the 1960s and the 1970s, and we needed a more orthodox vision.
Good morning. Ronald Reagan won. A tremendous landslide that rumbled right across the country and changed the political look of the land.
Tens of thousands of prayer meetings are being held on this day. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. We are a nation under God.
Reagan's victory made the Christian right very, very powerful. And there was a political alliance between Ronald Reagan, Mother Teresa, Pope John Paul II to propagate right-wing values in the whole world.
Motherhood is not what it used to be. Today we find it the center of a gathering storm as women and men argue the question of abortion.
No issue in America generates the emotions of the abortion debate.
Both sides press their propaganda war.
Who do you think you are, killing our babies?
There should be no man who should have the right to force any woman to have a child against her will.
In the 1980s, abortion was the most divisive political issue, and Mother Teresa became the flag bearer of the political right.
Well, abortion, in the full meaning of the word, it's really killing. It's a murder. Abortion has become the greatest destroyer of peace. We will never allow abortion to live.
Every single speech, every single interview, she was absolutely possessed by the issue of abortion.
Abortion is a pure murder. Every abortion is a double killing. It's the killing of the child and killing of the conscience of the mother.
Mother Teresa wanted above all else to preserve life, whether it was the tiny baby that she rescued from the streets or the dying person.
If a mother can murder her own child, what is left for you and for me?
When there were votes to be had on it in Ireland or in Italy, she would be called by the bishops of those places to give talks in those moments of political tension and political decisions. But she was, I believe, very much pressured to carry that message in many places.
I will not forget you.
I think she felt obligated always to do whatever the clergy told her to do, becoming, in a sense, used by the church.
Mother Teresa, you have been recognized internationally as the voice of the unborn child. Pope John Paul has asked you to speak publicly on this.
Our Holy Father didn't ask me to speak about that, but I've been always speaking about that because no one is more unwanted than the unborn child.
Mother Teresa was a weapon of propaganda. But I think she knew what she was doing, actually. I really do not think Mother Teresa was being used by Reagan or the Pope. I think she knew what she was doing and her heart was in it. If your heart wasn't in it, you couldn't do it that well. When Mother Teresa started off as a charity worker, she was not political. But in the 1980s, Mother Teresa became a leading political voice. She was one of the most political personalities of the 20th century.
Mother Teresa is a heroine of our times, and to the many honors she has received, including the Nobel Peace Prize, we add with deep affection and endless respect the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
And significantly, during the Reagan years, Mother Teresa's order flourished in the United States and all around the world as never before.
In the 80s, Mother Teresa sent me to Rome to continue my training. This is the day that I took my first vows in Rome. Here's all of our group sisters after vows celebrating with Mother, and they gave us big garlands of roses. And I'm the one over here. We were standing there before everyone, making these solemn promises with the intention of committing ourselves to this community for the rest of our lives. We wore that blue par sari for the first time. And my problem was that it was too much like Mother Teresa's. Mother Teresa and I are very different in size, but we got the same amount of cloth with which to cover ourselves. And it didn't reach for me. And she kept pulling this way and that way. She says, "Sister, you still don't know how to dress?" We took very seriously the idea that we were to be the bride of Christ. And Mother Teresa would often say, the spouse of Jesus crucified. We were to really give oneself wholeheartedly to Jesus as a wife. It was kind of like a wedding day. And there was another form of corporal penance that was given to us, and that were these wire chains with spikes on them. And we had one that we would wear right here around our biceps, and another longer one that we would wear around our waist. And the chains were designed to be painful. We were the spouse of Jesus crucified, so we had to share Jesus's pain. But never was I 100% completely convinced that this missionary of charity way was really the best way to live a life. Several of the things that the missionaries of charity require of their members are very similar to things that cults require. I remember the day we became novices, all 8 of us got pulled aside and ushered into this room in the back, and there was this big fire going. There were 4 stools set out, and there were 4 professed sisters. They had a pair of scissors, and they began to pray the rosary. And then they started to cut the hair of the sisters. And cutting as close to the scalp as is possible with a pair of scissors, just cutting off everything. And I just knew that I was going to be uglier than I had ever been in my entire life. I can still sometimes just kind of hear that snap of the scissors above my ears. And then there was this smell. It was just like this awful smell. It was so acrid. And what I discovered was my novice mistress with the hair that had been cut and tossing it all into the fire. And I sung, I have decided to follow Jesus, no turning back, no turning back, no turning back.
In a New York hospital, a lonely man lies dying of AIDS. But he's not really alone. 15,000 Americans have already died from the disease, and the numbers are doubling each year.
Every official interviewed at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta and here in New York say they are very worried about AIDS.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
To date, 70 out of every 100 AIDS cases have involved homosexuals.
In the 1980s, AIDS devastated the gay community, without question.
We do reap it in our flesh when we violate the laws of God.
Staffer Pat Buchanan said, the poor homosexual, they have declared war on nature, and now nature is exacting an awful retribution.
At that time, AIDS sufferers were believed to be in some way morally reprehensible and therefore, in a sense, deserving of the kind of illness that they were subjected to.
It's been happening to black people, homosexual men, IV drug users. These are not the people that anyone is particularly interested in serving.
When Mother Teresa was in New York, she was taken to Sing Sing prison.
There's a killer loose in Sing Sing, slowly, painfully executing inmates. The culprit, AIDS.
In the early 80s is when I first remember AIDS becoming a problem at Sing Sing. And then it just seemed to blossom.
I've lost the use of both my legs. My legs have contracted to where I can no longer use them. And they're extremely swollen.
Inmates were hopeless. It wasn't like you felt like you could go there and do anything positive because it was a death sentence.
I can't think of any place else that I'd rather not be than here. This is terrible.
It was, 2 days before Christmas. And I heard this rustling at the door. And when I looked up, Mother Teresa was just standing in the doorway. It was pretty incredible. She sat and talked to each of the inmates in the AIDS ward. They were extremely happy that she was there. Anybody that was around her had a huge grin on their face. It was this aura about her. She may have been tiny, but she was like a giant. She just kind of filled the air.
Other people had been trying to draw attention to the suffering of those prisoners. They'd tried very hard to obtain release so that they could die in peace, to no avail. But the prospect of 3 men dying in prison alone touched Mother Teresa deeply.
Nobel Peace Prize winner Mother Teresa has asked Governor Cuomo to work with her in setting up a home for AIDS victims. Assistants to Cuomo said she called him at the executive mansion to discuss the idea.
She said they're dying here and no one's caring for them. So she wanted to set up a hospice.
She immediately got in touch with Governor Cuomo, who was galvanized into action.
Mother Teresa asked Governor Cuomo for a Christmas present today, and she got it. The winner of the Nobel Peace Prize asked the governor to release 3 inmates with AIDS into her care.
I was at work on Christmas Eve, and I get the phone call. We have to process these men today because Mother Teresa has opened up the hospice, and the governor is saying we have to do this. I never seen the wheels of justice move that quickly.
We are hoping that they will be able to live and die in peace by getting tender love and care.
People had been trying to draw attention to the plight of AIDS sufferers, but it wasn't until 1985, when Mother Teresa arrived in the United States, that the world really took note of the degree of suffering.
She founded the first hospice for AIDS patients in America. It wasn't by gay activists. It wasn't by New York City. It was by Mother Teresa. There was a lot of stigma, but they were suffering, and that's all that mattered to her.
Reach out, touch faith.
In the mid-'80s, Mother Teresa was in her 70s. All of these invitations were coming for her to speak here, to do this there, and she accepted them all.
Jesus.
If you saw Mother for a few hours, you were doing really well.
In 1985, Mother Teresa went to the following countries: Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Australia, Papua New Guinea, Switzerland, United States, North Yemen, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, Italy, Vatican City, Poland, France, Italy again, and USA again.
She had become a celebrity with all that entailed. In other words, the press would follow her around the world.
I could see her kind of getting swallowed sometimes. I can remember once in Rome, there were crowds and crowds of people, and Mother walked in. She was wiping her face with her hands, and she was saying, "Oh, kisses, kisses, so many kisses."
Take a photograph only if you have the permission with you.
She was certainly very reticent about having her photograph taken, but she said every time a photograph of her was taken, a soul would be released from purgatory.
Reach out and touch me.
God bless you, Mother Teresa. God bless you.
Every time I saw her, she seemed more and more tired. And I had the impression that Mother wanted to slow down.
I have already written to our sisters to pray and to vote for somebody else in my place. I will be happy, very happy to be free and to be just a simple sister in the community. After nearly 35 years, I am longing for this.
One day in Rome, Mother told us she was going to see the Pope, which she always did. She said, "Mother has a very important question to ask the Holy Father. did God want her to continue this sort of traveling the globe all the time? And I could see that Mother rather hoped not to do as much travel, not to be giving the speeches all the time, to spend more time with the sisters. And when Mother came back, she looked downcrest. And she came in and she told us, well, the Holy Father has revealed God's will. And the Holy Father said, Mother, you must give loving care to all of the people and necessary care to the sisters. The Pope was saying she needs to continue to travel and accept all of these obligations. The Church needed her. And Mother Teresa never said no to the Church.
Hello again. Today, News Round Extra is in India, and I'm on my way to the city of Calcutta to meet an extraordinary lady. My first impression of Mother Teresa was how small and frail she is. But she has amazing stamina. The day before, she'd been in Delhi. The next day, she was flying to Rome. And although she was very busy, she found time to show me round.
Journalists from the West were regularly traveling to Calcutta to meet a saint of the gutters and then coming back to their viewership with inspirational stories.
Mother Teresa has traveled the world and says she sees beauty and love here in the cruel slums of Calcutta.
But as Mother Teresa's fame grew, a tiny number of journalists began to ask uncomfortable questions.
For most journalists, Mother Teresa told the perfect story. She was the one who helped the poor in these slums to survive. My girlfriend is from Calcutta, and we visited her relatives, and their question was, why is the West so obsessed with Mother Teresa? And I answered, she's a saint, and she really does something for the poor people in Calcutta. And they said, well, we can't see that. We went to the slums. Most of the poor didn't know her. And then I started to think, if I can't see them helping the poor, what are they doing? People came to her and flooded her with money. And as a reporter, the first thing you ask is, what are they doing with the money? I started my research. It was the law in India that all charitable organizations have to publish their accounts. They didn't. I found an ex-nun in New York, and this was kind of a breakthrough. But she was responsible for the accounts there. She told me the whole money they got donated was $50 million in 1 year. I was shocked. I estimated, in a very, very, very conservative estimate, if the rest of the world also makes 50 million, 100 million a year, and in 10 years, it's $1 billion.
Are you in great need of money? Because I know that you don't take any government grants of any kind.
I have never been in need, but I accept, I never refuse what people give.
So many people gave money. She really collected bucketfuls of money for her poor.
The Missionaries of Charity had a very strange relationship with money. We would receive lots of donations, but this big, huge collection of money. But if, for example, the bread was running low, we would have to go and beg for the bread. But even more important, while the bank account was getting higher and higher, the funds didn't find their way out into the poor.
England is one of the few countries where they published at least some of their accounts. The missionaries of charity in England, they only spent 7% for themselves, and all the rest was sent to the Vatican Bank.
The Vatican is, in theory, one of the richest institutions in the world.
I think there is great disquiet in Italy at the links between mafia, Vatican, politicians, banking. It's a familiar story. It's been going on for many years.
The Vatican Bank is not just a normal bank like any other bank.
The Catholic Church in Rome is its own banker and makes its own rules.
In the 1980s particularly, the Vatican Bank became involved in a huge number of scandals, money laundering, mafia links, and even murder.
The body of Roberto Calvi was discovered hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge.
His links to the Vatican were so close, he was known as God's banker.
When I was within the Missionaries of Charity, we didn't really know that the Vatican Bank was embroiled in all sorts of scandals. I remember in Rome, people would come with cash donations and just filling my bag full of money to take it to the Vatican Bank, and just in unbelievable sums of money. So much of the funds received by the Missionaries of Charity did tend to stack up in the Vatican Bank.
What are your thoughts around the secrecy of the Missionaries of Charity finances?
I don't know of any organization, religious or secular, which has money for the organization that doesn't try to keep their funds somewhat secret. Bank accounts are there for a reason, and they're not there for everybody to peer into.
It's just kind of inconceivable to me that all of that money that was given to the poor didn't reach the poor. The sisters could have distributed it in so many different ways, through foods or medicines or building places where people could live. It's connected, I think, to this idea of poverty and this glorification of suffering. Mother felt that being poor is good because Jesus was poor. It's that schizophrenic kind of thing in the Missionaries of Charity. We're here to serve the poor, we're here to help alleviate their suffering, but not too much.
Without knowing exactly how much money had been donated, it's difficult to say whether she could have used it better. She had not become embroiled in accountancy, in large organizations, legal aspects. It's probably fair to say that she rather prided herself at times on being the most disorganized organization in the world. But the scale on which the foundation spread throughout the world, suggests an enormous amount of money was actually going to the poor.
She gave more money to the Vatican Bank than entire countries. And I think if the donors had known that their money was not used at all or ended up in the Vatican Bank, they would have been furious. In the 80s, if you have some billions of dollars, you could really do something. Mother Teresa had the money to fight poverty, but she didn't do it. That's not only sad, it's a sin.
Mother Teresa has been touring the streets of London, and she says she's shocked by what she's found.
Yes, something that looks like a coffin made of cardboard. It was something very difficult to accept.
It's expected Mother Teresa will try to enlist the Prime Minister's support in her efforts to establish another home for the homeless in London.
She was very interested to get a hospice established for the homeless. And so we told Mother about a house going to be available should she wish to have it for £1 million. She said, yes, I want it. Turned to Richard and said, Richard, find me a rich man.
Say that again. It occurred to me that there were two rich people that I knew of by their fame, if you wish. One of them was Murdoch, and the other was Maxwell. Got through to one of Maxwell's underlings and said Mother Teresa would like Mr. Maxwell to buy her a house, and she'd like to meet him to say thank you. It was her style, she didn't beat about the bush. Maxwell's reputation was that he was an evil genius.
Flamboyant, charming, some say ruthless, Maxwell remains one of Britain's most famous adopted sons. He travels in his own yacht, owns a soccer team, publishes 6 newspapers, including the powerful British tabloid The Daily Mirror.
He's a man who gets results by a mixture of power and fear.
How tough a proprietor do you think you are?
How tough I am, or whether I'm friendlier, you must ask those people that work with.
The Cardinal had great reservations about the fact that the person that Richard had managed to line up was Robert Maxwell. He was at length to tell Mother to be wary. Teresa meets Robert Maxwell here, looking down at Mother, who is looking up at him with such openness, and here's me to the right. He's a big burly chap and very, very firm handshake, and so quite daunting experience altogether. But Mother just seemed to be totally unfazed, and during the course of the conversation, Maxwell's manner just began to soften, and he just seemed to be more relaxed and more chilled. It just became very much more human.
She said, I've just been given 2 houses by that nice man, Mr. Gorbachev. He's in Russia, you know that? And Maxwell said, yes, I know him. He gave me 2 houses, but I'm having difficulty getting through. Maxwell put his hand out, called an aide. He said, give me the Russian ambassador. And within minutes, a phone call came through. Yes, this is Rob Merkis. I'm having trouble. I'm just sitting with Mother Teresa, and she's got some houses in Moscow. Rhubarb. Yes, I thought you would. Thank you.
They were really engrossed in their conversation with each other, and then, of course, the talk about the house. And right towards the end, Mother took his hand, and she took his hand, and on the 5 knuckles, and looking at him as she was doing this, she just said, Jesus did it for you. And wow, did he virtually melt.
Transformed into a little boy sitting at his mother's side.
It was a hugely successful meeting. Mother was very happy. He wanted to do a big splash in his newspaper to come up with the money. This is the launch of Maxwell's appeal to his readers.
Afterwards, he said to me, Mr. Weldon, did you tell Mother my reputation? I was on the spot. I was very embarrassed. I said, yes, I did. And he said, what did she say? And I said, I'll tell you exactly what she said. She said, yes, maybe, but did you see the goodness in his eyes? And Maxwell looked at me, tears coming up in his eyes, tears, and he started crying. And he turned away from me and he went and stood facing the window with his huge shoulders heaving, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing like a little boy. And tears had been making down his shirt, down his front and everything else. And he just walked up to me slowly and said, thank you.
Mother Teresa did have this gift for charming, powerful people, but also of making them feel that they were in some way chosen for a higher purpose. That probably made her one of the most powerful people in the world.
By 1989, I'd been in the Missionaries of Charity for 12 years. We all felt that Mother was just exhausted. You could see it. All of this travel. And even though I had my doubts, we all loved her deeply. We're all having breakfast one day, and Mother announced that she was going to Sweden. From the end of the room, I announced, "Mother, my sister lives in Sweden." And Mother looked, and Mother talked to someone next to her, and then Mother said, "Sister, you're coming with Mother to Sweden." This was the first opportunity I would have to be the only sister who would be accompanying Mother. I also felt a great deal of responsibility because she wasn't well, and these trips were wearing on her. It was really a special time, those 2 days that I spent with Mother.
Let us thank God
Låt oss tacka Gud
for His great love
för hans stora kärlek
in bringing us together
genom att låta oss komma tillsammans
to share the joy of loving.
Just being able to watch her so close, just being able to sleep there in the bed next to her bed, just to share meals with her, it gave an entirely different feel to everything.
Vi läser i evangeliet att Gud älskar
I had often the sense that Mother Teresa was lonely. Even though she was always trying to look cheerful on the outside, but if you got kind of beyond that, you could feel that. I had this sense that Mother's interior life was difficult, that it was very painful.
Since 49 or 50, this terrible sense of loss, this untold darkness, this loneliness. The place of God in my soul is blank. There is no God in me.